Welcome to another beautiful class of the Rebbe on the Parsha. I hope you have a book.
I don't.
Okay, if you don't have a book, it's
I'll
important
listen.
that you get a chumash. I hope you have a chumash.
I
If
do.
you don't have a chumash
I have it.
on the internet. A chumash is a Bible. If you don't have the chumash, go on the internet and go to Chabad.org and see the chumash, because it's a little bit text loaded. The text Parsha text loaded a little bit. So we need to just look at the text a little bit over here in this class. This class starts in the book. If you don't have a book, if you're on Zoom, you should get a book. Call Chabad. You can get you a book. So you have this book and the books to come, and so you can follow through with the class. So it will be easier for you to do. Okay, my dear friends, we're going to learn a beautiful concept. The way the Rebbe, Rashi, we're still in the Rashi. Rashi, who's the commentator on the Chumash, was accepted by Klal Yisrael, by the Jewish nation, as the commentator, the simple commentator on the Chumash. And you almost cannot learn Torah without Rashi today. You always need to learn Chumash and Rashi, the basics of it. And therefore, there are very important rules to Rashi. And the class starts on page 63 in this book. And he brings down we've gone through the rules. He brings down the rules, some new and some old, we already mentioned. And it's important to know the rules of Rashi. There's actually a book called Klali Rashi, which Avot Rebbe put out, the principles of Rashi and how to learn Rashi. And why it's important to know how to learn Rashi is because Rashi says, I come to explain the verse. I come to explain the verse. So we need to know how to learn the Rashi, how Rashi looked at the verse, and how Rashi wanted every Jew should look at the verse. He wanted every Jew for 5-year-old to look at the verse. Even though there are many different commentators in the Torah, Rashi does not argue that there are other commentators, the other way to look at the verse. No arguments in that. Rashi didn't say only learn me and don't learn anything else. That's not true. You should learn many different commentators on the verse. As I showed you in Mikras Gedolos, take a Chumash, you can have a lot of commentators on every verse. And you should learn, expound your wisdom, and learn more. But Rashi says, my job is to explain you the verse, the simple verse. What is the verse telling you? That's it. Have you ever said a story? Have you ever said a story in your life that had another meaning, that you wanted to bring out another meaning to the story? Right? I'm sure you did. I'm sure you told a story in your life to somebody else, but you really wanted to bring out something totally different. You wanted to tell them something deeper, right? Hopefully you had a purpose in the story. If it was a true story or not a true story, that doesn't make a difference. You wanted to bring out, that's Mishalim, right? In Mishalim, we tell stories because we, not interested per se in just telling you the facts of the story, which might be also important to listen, but you really want the person who's listening to the story to come and to learn something more than the story. You want to bring out something in the story, right? Hopefully. The deeper meaning of the story or the purpose behind the story, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be a very deeper meaning in every story, but there could be deeper meanings in every story that we tell. And so too, in a way, when you open a pasuk, when you learn the Torah, there's a story right in front of you, and the story is supposed to tell us something else. The story is supposed to convey a message. It could be a simple message, it could be a deep message, whatever it might be. The story might have both levels. The story itself might have many different levels in the story, right? So in Rashi, when you look at the Rashi's telling you what is the simple meaning of the story? What is the simple expression of the story? I don't need really Rashi to learn the pasuk. I can read the pasuk. I can read the verse without Rashi. And there are many verses that Rashi doesn't say anything, so the verse is still there. But Rashi, in essence, when Rashi comes and says something, he wants it that you should open your mind a little bit, not to go away from the simple verse. That's why Rashi says, I'm not going away from the simple meaning of the verse, but I want you to, the verse is trying to convey us something over here. Yep.
Rashi interprets so a 5-year-old can comprehend.
Correct.
5-year-old can't comprehend the deeper meaning.
Right, he can't. He can't. He can't. And Rashi says, I'm not going to go to the deeper meaning. I'm going to go to the deeper meaning of a 5-year-old. I'm going to give him a little bit of picture, like we tell a story to a child. He might not know the deeper meanings of the story, but the story is trying to convey a simple concept. Don't be nice, be a good person. Why can we tell stories to children? It's not only about the story. We're trying to convey a message to the kid. We're trying to convey him a message, a simple message. We're not arguing that it's not a deep message. Simple message.
Rivka wants me to tell you that somebody called that's trying to get on Zoom.
Okay. I don't know. I'm not being asked on Zoom to invite anybody on. So they're going on the wrong Zoom number. So I cannot help them. Okay, let's go further, okay? But thank you for the message. I appreciate it. So let's go to the rules of logic quickly. Interpreting events in the Torah out of chronological order isn't out of the question, but it isn't preferred option, as it doesn't match Shut. Now, as you'll soon see, there's a rule. There's no chronological order to the Torah. But Rashi doesn't take that as a general statement. And therefore, you don't find Rashi saying it always. You don't find Rashi saying it always. There's no chronological order. If Rashi says it, he wants to connect it to the simple meaning of the verse. So if Rashi doesn't say it, then Rashi holds that it doesn't fit the simple meaning of the verse, and therefore Rashi would go chronological order. So you understand? So even though there's a general principle, you'll see Rashi, and we saw it a couple times already, as you'll to Chitas, you saw it a couple times that Rashi did say, Ein muktim or mucha b'Torah. There's no chronological order. But then Rashi says it, every time he wants to say it, he says it. Why? Because in general, there is a chronological order to the Torah. There is a chronological order to it. Rashi doesn't hold it as a general principle. Rashi holds it only when it fits the simple meaning of the verse. Number two, Rashi only quotes words from the verse that directly contribute to his explanation. This is also a very interesting concept in Rashi. We won't get into it so deeply because meaning what would you call the I don't know what you call it in English. Right, so you have open a chumash. See if you can see it over here. Right, so you have what do you call these two words? You know, that's the verse. But Rashi chooses these two letters. What's that? I don't know what you call those letters. Then you have the interpretation. Right, so he says Ve'ela Mishpat. Look, it's funny. I opened up this week's Parsha. Ve'ela Mishpatim, and then he goes into the interpretation. So he picks these two words, Ve'ela Mishpatim. He picks. Actually, when he chooses which letters of the verse, what? Or the verse itself. He picks certain letters of the verse. When he picks those letters, it's for a reason. He does not picking. Sometimes Rashi picks certain letters, sometimes he doesn't.
Is it letters or words?
Words. Okay? Every word in Rashi, we mentioned this again, every word in Rashi is precise. If Rashi uses unusual language, it comes to teach us something. Rashi wants to bring the language. Okay, now, we're going to text number 1. I want you to read it. I cannot, it's going to take too long, We're going to read, the beauty of the Sikha is that we see a very interesting narrative when it comes to the giving of the Torah. But this week's portion, from last week's portion, in the future, we're going to take these two portions, this week, last week's portion, even though it continues. We see that this Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah that happened last week, this narrative is seemingly happening in different portions again and again. And we have these narratives of the giving of the Torah. So this week's portion narrative number 1 is last week's portion. And it's in text number 1a It's Exodus chapter 19, verse number 1, and it goes to verse number 20. Okay, read the narrative, read it by yourself. Here she is. So read the narrative of the giving of the Torah. Right? This is in last week's portion. Okay. So you have that narrative. Read it. Let's read it to yourself. We're going to read a couple of different narratives. Okay. Right? So yeah, read it to yourself. Give you a minute. Read the portion. Read the portion. This is last week's portion on chapter. If you don't have the book, chapter 19, verse number 1. We're going for chapter 19, verse number 1 to verse 20. So we have the narrative of last week, the giving of the Torah. God comes down to the Jewish people the third day. He comes down in the first of the month. He tells Moshe Rabbeinu, go get ready the Jews. Third of the month, the fourth of the month, the fifth of the month, and ultimately the sixth of the month. Bingo, we have Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. We have one narrative. Right? Got that narrative? Okay. Then we have text number 2 is still in the first narrative of last week. Text number 2 is the giving of the Torah, the 10 Commandments, chapter 20, verse number 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 to 21. You have the giving of the Torah, 10 Commandments. This is all last week's narrative. Okay? You got it? You read it? The story, right? We have a story. We have a story of the laws. The story of the giving of the Torah, what happened last week. The Torah then goes into Parsha Mishpatim. The Torah goes into this week's portion, right? And the Torah tells us the laws. It starts going into laws, right? These are the laws. That's what this week's Parsha is called. These are the laws. Laws of slave. What? Laws. These are the laws. So now the Torah goes into slavery and it goes into hundreds of laws, right? Murder, animals, Shabbos Aveda, whatever, hundreds of laws, right? Correct? And then we go to narrative number 2. We're going to narrative number 2. Back, seemingly back. We're going back. We're flying backwards again. And that's narrative number 2 in this week's portion. Exodus chapter 24. If you don't have the book, Exodus chapter 24, we go from 1 till 18. Right? What happens? Oh, Moshe Rama. And to Moses, he says, go up to the mountain. He goes to narrative number 2. Right? What happened? We had Yitro. They give you the Torah, narrative number 1. They went to Mishpatim, all these laws. And then, seemingly, we go back to the story again. We go back to the narrative number 2 that happened in the beginning. Right? You look at the story. You right? And Moses said, come up to the mountain, and God and Naravir, 70 elders. And Moses was alone, he approached God. But they shall not approach, and the people shall not ascend to him. So Moses came up and told the people the words of God, and all the ordinances, and all the people answered and said all of what God said we will do. Moses wrote the words of God, rose in the early morning, he built an altar for the mountain. We're going back to where? We're going back to the previous story, right? Where does this belong? It belongs really in Parshas Yisrael. What's going on over here, right? Right? If you read the Torah, if you're a 5-year-old reading the Torah, right? You read the last week's portion. You came to this week's portion. Now this is the end of this week's portion. We didn't even get yet the Chitas. We're holding Thursday, and we didn't get it in the Chitas. It's actually a Friday. It's a Friday of the Shabbos Chitas. And the truth is, it happens again. Then we go to Truma, the building the Mishkan, and then to Tzaveh, which is both building Mishkan. Then we go to Kisisa. We're back to the story. We're flying back to the story of Matan Torah again, right? We're going to the story of the golden calf. We're going all the way back. You realize what's happening over here? If you just look at the Torah, you understand you're a 5-year-old child, whatever, you're learning Chumash. What's going on over here? Something's, what's the order? What's going on over here? I finished the story of giving it. Now I'm back to the story of the giving the Torah. And this week's I'm back to the story. Like why couldn't the story in this week's portion be put in last week's portion?
Does it relate to this week's in somehow?
So what is it? So with the legend, what's going on over here, right? If I'm a child, I'm opening the Chumash. The question should be asked. Like, what happened? I went from the giving of the Torah to the laws. That makes sense. The laws is giving of the Torah. Makes sense. And we're back to the giving of the Torah. We finished that story already. Will you give me another narrative of the giving of the Torah? That happened last week. We did that last week. So why we're going back? Why we're going back? Right? So every child would ask that question. What's happening over here? What's the storyline? Can you tell me the storyline? I'm mixed up over here. No, it doesn't say that. It says he's going back. It doesn't say he's going back. No, he's still up there according to this story. He's still up there. He's not going back. We don't. Right, he didn't go back anywhere. He didn't come down. He didn't go back. The golden calf didn't happen yet. That's even the bigger problem. We're not going to talk about that. That we'll talk about in 3 weeks from now. But 3 weeks from now, he actually goes back all the way again.
Are you talking about text 3a?
I'm talking about the second narrative. The second narrative is text number 2. Is it text number 2? The second narrative is text number 2. That's in this week's portion. So go on text number 3a. Okay, now we're going to bring the Rashi. I asked you a question. I didn't mention the Rashi yet. So I just asked you a question, like, what's going on over here? And Rashi's bothered because any 5-year-old kid would be bothered with it. What's going on over here? Right? So Rashi says in text number 3a in your book, on text number 24:1 in the Parsha, in this week's portion, Rashi says, and Moshe said, come up to God, you and Aaron, Nadab and Avihu, and the 70 elders, and the prostrates himself for the Father. And Rashi answers, and Moshe said to God, come up. This section was said before the 10 Commandments. This section was said before the 10 Commandments. Rashi tells a 5-year-old kid, you're right. This section was said before the 10 Commandments, not even after the 10 Commandments. This section was said before the 10 Commandments. This section was said before the story last week. Moshe was given the instruction to come up on the 4th day of the month of Nisan. This happened before Matan Torah. The Matan Torah happened on the 7th day of Nisan. This happened on the 4th day of Nisan. This story at the end of the portion happened before the giving of the Torah. That's what Rashi says. He tells the child right away. This happened before. That's it. Even though. But Rashi doesn't say there's no chronological order in the Torah. It's interesting. Rashi doesn't say over here there's no chronological order in the Torah. When Rashi usually want to tell you there's no chronological order, he would say over here there's no chronological order in the Torah. He doesn't say that. He just tells the child, listen, this portion that you're reading right now, at the end of this week's portion, it was told before the giving of the Torah. Before Matan Torah. That's what Rashi tells him. Parsha zu come up. Parsha zu nemra kedem aseres hadibris. This portion was said before the giving of the Torah, but a V, B'Sivan, Nemra Alei, because on the 4th day of Sivan, God told to Moshe to go up. Now, even though God told to Moshe to go up later, again, that happened after the golden calf. We're not even holding by there yet.
Rabbi, did you mean Nisan or Sivan?
Sivan, I'm sorry, Sivan.
Oh, okay. Just
On the
wanna
fourth
make
day of
sure.
Sivan. Right, Nisan is
Thank you, thank you.
Passover. Wrong month.
That's
The
okay,
fourth-
we're not there yet.
Fourth day of Sivan. So Moshe Rabbeinu was asked to go up on the fourth day of Sivan. That's when Moshe Rabbeinu went up. And then Moshe Rabbeinu came down again and was told to make sure that people go to the mikveh, they don't whatever, all we were told, because in 3 days, 5th, 6th, and 7th, or the 4th, 5th, and 7th, that's a whole Rashi differently. The Moshe added another day. That's a different subject. So that Moshe Rabbeinu was told in 3 days they're going to give the Torah. So we have the general rule. Rashi doesn't say it, but there's a general rule, and that's text number 4. Rabbi Menashe Baruch Talichta Mishmei de Rav. The Menashe Bar Tachlifta said in the name of Rav, the Gemara, Talmud, Zaysei Meres, we know the general rule, a muktam umucha b'Torah, there's no chronological order in the Torah. Right? So that's the general rule. So the truth is, there is a general rule. There's no chronological order in the Torah. Don't ask questions about chronological orders in the Torah. There's no chronological order in the Torah. And the proof is, as I said, you're going to come in 2 weeks' time from now. You're going to come back to Matan Torah. You're going to come back. The story is going to revert you back all the way to the giving of the Torah. Because we're going to go back to them doing the golden calf, and we're going back to the whole situation. The truth is, ve'elah ha-mishpatim, and these are the laws. If you want to talk practical, when did Moshe Rabbeinu tell them about the laws? We're talking about a long time later, right? After Matan Torah. It took him time, right? Because it came down on the 40th day. There was the golden calf. He then went up another 40 days, asked God forgiveness. He went back up another 40 days, came down. So it's 120 days later. Yom Kippur. So we're far away. It was from Sivan, the 7th day of Sivan, that God gave the Torah till the Tishrei, right? Sivan, Sivan, Tammuz, of Elul, Tishrei. We're 5 months later that really Moshe Rabbeinu sat down and taught law to the Jewish nation, right? They knew the 10 Commandments. They knew that they got a big Torah, but they didn't have Elam Mishpatim till a couple of months later. So there is no chronological order, but Rashi doesn't agree with that. We know Rashi doesn't agree because Rashi doesn't say that. So Rashi holds that there is chronological order. In general, there is chronological order. Because you have to go to, because why? It's simple. Why? Because that's a simple Torah. You can't tell a kid, we can't learn with a kid. The pasuk, when a kid, the 5-year-old, learns the verses, he thinks that everything's going fine. You're not telling him a story backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. Unless you have to tell him that there's not a chronological. But in general, he takes the Torah as a chronological order. Right? That's normal. You're not going to tell a kid everything in this book is not chronologically ordered. He'll say, what the heck? Why don't we just format the book? Why don't we just put everything? Why don't we do better than Why drive us crazy? Therefore, text number 5, Nachmanides disagrees, with the general principle. It's not a general principle. Rabbi Avram ben Ezra invokes the principle. There's no chronological order of earlier or later in the Torah, very often at will. In my opinion, the entire Torah follows a chronological order. The Nachman and Abban says, no, there is a chronological. What can you can't say a blank statement. There's no chronological order. That's not right. There is a chronological order. Right? You can say, maybe God created the world if the giving of the Torah. I don't know, no chronological order. So how you know what came first, the chicken or the egg? There is a chronological order. There is a chronological. If not, then you say, who said the first day happened, the second day, having no chronological order. So you cannot say that. In my opinion, the Torah follows a chronological aside when the Torah makes the departure explicit. And any such departure must have a good reason. There has to be a reason why didn't the Torah put it in chronological order? You can't say, oh, there's no chronological order, therefore don't ask the question why did it? No, the Torah does go in chronological order. You just have to know the reason why the Torah suddenly went off the chronological order. Why wouldn't he go in chronological order? So there is a rule of the Torah going and there's a reason why in this specific place the Torah didn't go in the chronological order. So the Rebbe writes text number 6. This is going to be a good ending. Listen, just hang in there, my friend. The Rebbe says, Al Pizeh, Rashi cites the rule. There's no chronological order of earlier, later. A number of times, Rashi does cite it. If you learn Chitas, you'll see Rashi cites it. However, it is clear that this principle can only be invoked when there's no alternative other explanation. There must be also reason for this departure. So even Rashi agrees with the Ramban. In this way, the Rashi does not always say it. He doesn't say it over here in this Rashi. He doesn't mention it. Doesn't mention that, even though he says it openly that this pasuk belongs in the previous parsha. But he doesn't say that it's not there because of chronological order. Because Rashi agrees with that concept. That to say a general blank statement that Torah goes in chronological order is not the right thing. There has to be a reason. I have to tell you the reason why the Torah doesn't go in chronological order. And in our case, we need to explain this section beginning, and Moshe said come up, was actually said in the 4th of Nisan for the 10 Commandments. Why does it appear only at the end of the Parsha's part, not a place? That's the question. So we have to ask the question. The kid, 5-year-old needs to know. And all of us need to know. Why does the Torah over here put this portion over here? Why does the Torah put the portion here? And the question you might ask, and Mishpatim, you should ask the same question when it comes 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now. You should ask the same question. It's a good question. The whole building of the Mishkan, and suddenly we put a story. We're going back to a different narrative. We're going back to the narrative number 2 or number 3 of narrative number 1, right? So we had narrative number 1 in Parsha. That's the giving of the Torah. In this week's portion, we have narrative number 2 of number 1. And in 3 weeks now, you're going to go back to narrative number 3 of number 1. And the question is why? It's a good question. But right now, Rashi is dealing with the young boy he's not holding yet Parsha's Kisisa. It's far away from him right now. We got to go finish Mishpatim, Truma, Tetzava, Kisisa. He is in 4 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now, he'll come to that portion. So that is the question. Why? What does Rashi want the kid? What is Rashi telling? Why Taka the Torah divides the narrative into 2 different places? Again, why does the Torah take 2 different narratives of the same story, one in last week's portion, and then come back again to this week's portion and start narrative number 2 of the same story? We already said the narrative of number 1, so why did the Torah come with another narrative again? I want to ask you a question. Let's see. Let's those on Zoom over here. Can I know a big group on Zoom? And those that are here, big group here too. So let's try. Can you see the difference between narrative number 1 and narrative number 2? Can anybody give me can anybody see a difference between narrative number 1 and narrative number 2? So let's stick to this story.
But that's also
Yeah. You find a lot of times in Rashi. I'm not arguing with that. Let's it's not. No. Does this? Stick to this. Stick to this. Anybody can tell me? Can they see a difference
Between text 1A and text 1B?
between text between text 1 and text 1A and text number 2? Really, narrative number 2 is number 2. Narrative number 1 is text number 1A. 1B is the 10 Commandments, but narrative number 1 and narrative number 2. Narrative number 1, text number 1 is last week's portion, and text number 2 is this week's portion. I'm not talking about Mishpatim. I'm talking about the narrative of the giving of the Torah. I'm talking about the narrative number 2. It doesn't say the word Mishpatim.
One is more preparation and more present tense, and then the next one is after the fact, no? It's talking about how you prepare yourself.
Now, what's interesting is Rashi says that this needs to be said in last week's portion. I mean, in essence, Rashi says that this narrative number 2 fits with narrative number 1, but it's giving you a different story. It's telling you right now after the fact, it's giving you a different story. Narrative number 1 and narrative number 2 both belong in last week's portion, but narrative number 1 is giving me one concept of the story, and narrative number 2 is giving me a different concept of the story.
Rabbi?
That means, in essence, what we're trying to tell you over here, that there's one narrative with 2 stories.
Rabbi?
Yes?
What I'm finding in the first one
Yeah.
is like this incredible love that Hashem has. We're treasured people, and it is a different, on the wings of eagles, he's carried us. In the other narrative, in B, it's more the laws. It's more of the, it's a different type of relationships. It has to do with the laws and everything. Whereas this
Very good.
is all about the love
Okay.
that has.
Very good. Anybody else want to give another narrative? So she says in narrative number 1, so over here talks about the Eibishter is telling the Jews that you're Melechas Kohanim, you're a priestly nation and a holy people. And the second one is the mitzvahs are more connected in this one. Mishpatim, Vayamika. Okay. Well, I can tell you a lot of things. I can give you many things. I'm just asking you if you're gonna see if you see any difference between narrative number 1, because in essence, again, what the Rebbe wants to tell us is the Rashi doesn't say that there's no chronological order in the Torah in this aspect. Rashi agrees that there is a chronological order in the Torah. Rashi's telling us we're still in the story. We're still in the story. We're still in the story. And that's why actually Rashi says in the beginning of the Parsha that this is just a continuation of previous last week's Parsha. The whole Parsha is just a continuation. We're still in the narrative. We're still in narrative number 1. We haven't left narrative number 1. We're just giving you another story. Story A of this situation and story B. In essence, there are 2 concepts in the story. There are 2 purposes in telling you the story.
Rabbi, sometimes when you read a book, like a regular secular
Right.
book, it'll have an ongoing story, and then it'll go back 16 years ago, and then it comes to the present, then it goes
Right.
back, because it's explaining the background for the current story
Right.
from the
Very good. I like that. Right. So why you go back? Not because to gesund, not
Right.
because there's no because we want to maybe explain that the story has many kinds of purposes to the story.
Mhm.
There's many reasons why we're telling you the story.
Yes.
We're telling you the story. Maybe we're giving you narrative number 1 starts in portion Vayisrei, and as you go to this week's portion, we're giving you what's the other narrative, what's the other purpose of the story. And maybe when you'll come to Parsha Kisisa, we'll give you the third narrative to the story. The third purpose of the story. So this is the way the Rebbe reads it. And this way the Rebbe wants, in essence, feels that every Jew should, when he reads the Pasiks, these Psukim, he should see these 2 narratives to the story. He should see these 2 concepts, what the Torah wants to tell him. Again, in telling him the story of Matan Torah, of the giving Torah, what the Torah would tell us. It says, the Rebbe says as follows, in text number 7. Let's see. Okay? So the giving of the Torah, we see 2 objectives. There were 2 objectives, at least at this present time. There were 2 objectives in this story. First, he gave the people the 10 Commandments, the law of the Torah. Second, through receiving the Torah, the Jewish people became God's servants. As the verse states, you will serve God in this mountain. So there's two narratives that the Torah wants you should go out from Matan Torah. And it's a long narrative. That's why we have two portions. And actually, it's going to go on. We're not finished narrative totally. But at this present time, the Torah wants to tell us two concepts, in a way. There's the concept of Torah, Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, right? Commandments. And there's a concept, why? Why the commandments? Why? Why? What's the purpose of the commandments? What is the agenda? Why? Why do we need the commandments? Why do we need these rules? Why? What do we need it for? Self-understood. We need it. Or is it relate? We know the Abishah wants a relation. That's the basic reason. That's one simple reason. God wants a relationship. God wants a relationship. Right? So when you go out, you create a relationship with somebody else, man and woman, let's say, or family, or whatever. You create rules to the relationship. But why do we have these rules? Because we want a good relationship. Right? We don't want these rules because we're trying to hurt each other, bog down each other, or limit each other. We want these rules because we want a relationship. And relationship demands some kind of rules between one another, right? There needs some kind of rules. Cannot be that there's no rules between they can do whatever we want. No, there's boundaries, there's commitments.
Is that why it talks about don't go near the boundary of the mountain? It just hit me.
Okay, could be. Could be, yeah, could be, yeah. All these, yeah, could be.
Don't go near women.
Yeah, that's also part of the boundaries. There are a lot of boundaries. There's rules and regulations. Right, you can ask that question. We don't go near women, all these rules, wearing a head covering, all these things. Right? But then, hopefully, you'll realize that all these boundaries, there's some kind of a relationship going on over here. There's some kind of purpose in these boundaries. There's some kind of purpose in this giving of the Torah. It's not just about boundaries. It's about what the boundaries mean, what the boundaries give.
So Mishpatim
Some of it,
is a practical application of the giving of the Torah.
right? But then we come back and we remind the Jew that it's not about the boundaries, not about the Mishpatim per se. It's not about that only. Don't look at it only as these boundaries. Look at the words of the Rebbe. Let's see the words of the Rebbe himself in text number 8. The account of the Torah's portion of Yisrael focused primarily of giving of the Torah and its commandments, the 10 Commandments. That's the primary aspect of Yisrael. Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. That's really the whole concept. Therefore, the account of the preparation for the giving of the Torah focused on the commandments given to prepare the Jews for this event. Like he says, you got to get ready. You got to have boundaries. You got to put boundaries on the mountain. You got to separate from the women. You got to go to the mikveh. You got to get ready. Why? Etc. We didn't give the Torah yet, actually. You see the word that Rashi says over here, these words were said before the giving of the 10 Commandments. The narrative that we asked you to read in narrative 1, I don't know why they brought narrative 2, because that really, they shouldn't have brought even narrative 2 in text number 1b. Could have kept text number 1a, and that's it. Because once you go to text number 1b, you're going to the 10 Commandments. Text number 1a is the preparation for the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are not given yet. So the text number 1a prepares a Jew to the giving of the Torah. You want to be a holy nation? You want to be a chosen nation? You need boundaries. You got to get ready for that. You got to prepare yourself for that. Why? Because if you want to see commandments, but it's 10 or 16 or 13, then you need to create boundaries. You cannot, if you're not ready to create boundaries, you're not ready to create rules or regulations, you're not ready for the giving of the Torah yet. So really, the preparation is not only spiritual preparation. This preparation is to be able to receive boundaries. The truth is,
Rabbi,
the whole preparation to the wedding is that yeah, we're gonna. What do you say to your wife? What does the man say to his wife?
Yes.
We're now becoming exclusive. We prepared ourselves our whole lives for this. We prepared our whole lives to become exclusive. You imagine we've been our lives free for the last 20, 30 years. All for what? That we're going to become that you need a lot of preparation. I think a lot of people are not ready for that. They wake up the next day and say, what's going on over here? I feel like I'm in shackles.
Rabbi,
I thought this was going to be great. It seems like a very doesn't seem great after all. But so you didn't prepare yourself right. You simply didn't prepare yourself correctly for this union, because this relationship. I don't want to use the word because that's the next part of this. The second part. I'm jumping. But this Matan Torah takes a lot of rules, 10 commandments, and not only 10 commandments, 613 commandments. Is a lot of rules and regulations.
Rabbi,
Yes.
there's actually a term for when you put something after and it should have happened before. It's called it's like a flashback.
Right. Good. I like that.
It's a
A
flashback.
flashback. I like it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
or a foreshadowing.
Whatever. Beautiful. That's good too. So Matan Torah last week, the Torah was simply preparing Jews for what it means to accept upon themselves these rules and regulations. You got to get ready for this, right? You have to get ready for what you're committing yourself to. And they got ready. They got ready. We know that whatever, they didn't get ready totally, but they got ready. Because the truth is, nobody's ready for this. Like I said about mitzvah boy, they get to, I'm ready, I'm committed. Yeah.
What are you doing next?
Yeah, what are you doing? I'm gonna be tomorrow morning at the vineyard. Are you ready? Are you gonna come to shul tomorrow? Are you gonna put on tefillin tomorrow? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you surely ready? That's why the truth is that by Chabad, by the world, they say a bracha when a bar mitzvah boy, when he gets bar mitzvah, he say a bracha, Baruch shepatrani ma'ina shalazeh. I'm happy that God, I don't have any more this child's issues, his sins. Chabad, we don't say God's name because the question is he ready? And if he's not ready, well, then then maybe the parents are still they didn't get him ready. They didn't get him ready. They got him ready for his bar mitzvah to read the Torah, maybe. They didn't get him ready for real life. They didn't get him ready for the obligation that he's taken upon himself. His bar mitzvah, the son of commandments, bat mitzvah, the daughter of commandments. This was Matan Torah was the Jewish people's bar mitzvah. It was the Jewish nation's bar mitzvah. They all got up and they said the speech. I'm so happy to be a Jew. I'm gonna do everything. I'm responsible. Okay, you're responsible. Here it is. Here's your responsibility. Right? So therefore, the Torah right away comes and tells us a second narrative.
How to be responsible.
Why should you be responsible?
That's the more important.
Why should you do this? Why? I understand you want to be responsible. You feel like an adult. You feel great. Why? Why? There's a second narrative. We forget the second narrative. That's the problem. That's why Rashi says right away, no, it's not. It's there. We're still in the first narrative. He didn't go to the second narrative. It belongs before the giving of the Torah. It belongs before the giving of the Torah. A conscious account of the Torah portion of Mishpatim focus on the second aspect of the giving of the Torah. The covenant. It's the covenant. It's the relationship. It's our bond to God. The covenant between God and the Jewish people, though, through which a Jew becomes God's servant. The covenant was forged through the series of actions described in this account. The people accepting the Torah. This is why the first time we see the expression, we will do and we will hear Nasa v'nishma. Because the people understood that it's more than dust. It's more than dust. The dust did not even dust Nasa v'nishma. We'll do and we'll understand. Because there's a covenant. There's not just only the action. It's the nishma. In last week's portion, the Jewish people just said nasa. We will do. In this week's portion, they say nasa v'nishma. We will do and we'll understand.
Is this connected to the idea of thought, speech, and action, that Hashem wants us to have the thoughts, speak about the thoughts, and then do the action as the relationship?
The Abish doesn't want robots. He wants the nasa, because that's like in any relationship, we want the nasa. Everybody wants nasa, right? In a relationship, what's important to you? You don't know what I'm thinking. You know what I'm doing. But really, what would you like that let us do things?
Think about it.
Yeah, you would like that you put some thought in it, that you really want to do it. You have a desire to do it. You're not just doing it because, okay, we're committed. What did I do? I'm stuck. I committed myself under it's like an institution. I'm committed to the institution of marriage. I feel like I'm in jail. What should I do? I got to do what I got to do. That's the beauty of this relationship. That you talk and doing everything, you're committed. But that's the beauty of the relationship. The beauty of the relationship is nishma. That not only the nasa, that you'll understand. There's a commitment, there's a bris, we made a covenant. There's much deeper behind. There's not a story behind this story. It's not just what we do. There's the purpose of this mitzvah. The purpose, there's the reason behind it.
It's the reason why the first thing in this Parsha is about having a slave, because we're supposed to be
Right, correct. Yeah, according to some, yeah. Servitude. That we understand that we are in the service of each other. We're not just here. We're here to help each other. We have a purpose in this relationship. It's not just, do and don't do. No, there's a purpose in the doing and the don't doing, or why specifically these doings and not something else. Why did God pick this and not something else? Because these are important to him, self-understood. Can't ask God to give him, what's important to me is not that you do something, you can do what he wants for him. I have my needs. Or you have your needs, and we're here for each other. So really, it's not just I'm doing what you want me to do. Actually, by doing what I want to do is accomplishing my purpose in this life. That's it. Obviously, so it's not just an obligation. You have to love somebody else. No, by loving somebody else, you're loving yourself. You're helping yourself. And that's why we struggle, obviously, because we always think it's about somebody else and nothing to do with us. I'm forced to do it for you. We're here, I have to do something for you. If you're not going to like me. You can think I'm not a nice guy, or whatever the reason might be. Or I'll do something for you, you do something for me. Right? That's the truth is, if I do something for you, and then I ask you to do something for me, you said, no, I don't know if I'll do it again for you so quickly. When you're going to come to me, right? I don't know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Depends how compassionate I am. But if a person does something for somebody else, and he feels that he's doing for himself, so what is the difference if I ask you to do something for me? Everything I do for you, I feel like I'm doing for myself. I don't need to have you to do anything for me. I don't need anything from you. I need from you. By me doing for you is doing it for me. In essence, the Torah wanted and separated it in a way, not because it was not part of the same narrative. It is part of the same narrative. We wanted to separate it in a way, to put narrative number one in last week's portion, narrative number two in this week's portion. Put something, so to say, laws in between it, right? Laws, a lot of laws, trunks in an unbelievable amount of laws in between. And trust me, there's a lot of laws in all those laws. The whole Gemara, many tractates of Talmud in last week's portion, in this week's portion, in a very short period. Laws between man and God, laws of the holidays we have today. Unbelievable amount of laws we just read in the last 3 days, four days. But it comes back around to tell you, never forget. I like that flash. It comes that flash memory to remind us. That's not like a new concept. No, it's not. That's what Rashi says. No, this is written before. This is in the system before. This is the original idea, that you have the concept of the purpose in all this. The connection that a Jew has with God, which is the purpose in all this. The purpose and why we are Am Segula in the Raxi's portion. And we are Am Segula. Why are we an Am Segula? Because of laws. We are a chosen nation, and a Segula means a prized. Right? Look at how we translate it. Am Segula.
Rabbi, I always think of it because it's same shorish as the word purple, and purple is royalty.
Okay. You obey me, you shall be a treasure. Segula is a chant, say treasure. Why are you a treasure? Because you do the laws, don't do the laws. You're a treasure because you have a relationship. That's the treasure. We are in a relationship. We are in a commitment. We are in a covenant. That's the relationship. That's the segula. Right? So, what's happening in the world today, you sometimes don't feel like such a segula. Sometimes you don't feel like such a treasure. But the Abish says you are a treasure. You are a treasure. You are a treasure. You're a treasure. The Jewish nation is a treasure.
The world's obsessed with us. So
Whatever. I don't care about the world. I don't care about the world that much. I care about how a Jew responds. A Jew responds. We are a treasure.
why would they be so obsessed with?
Yeah, okay, that's good too. But the way the Jew responds to things that are happening in the world, you are a treasure. Because we're not a treasure in per se in what we do or we don't do. We're a treasure in why we do and we don't do, who we are as a nation. And who we are as a nation? We're a nation of God. We're a nation that's bound to God. That was not part of that was my that was my intro, my editorial, just in my feelings of what's happening in the world today, Jewish nation. So that's the beauty of this situation. The Abish says to the Jewish people, the covenant was forged through the series of actions described in the account. The people accepted to saying, we'll do, we'll hear, writing the book of the covenant and the construction of the altar and the sacrifice, the sprinkle of blood. It's all part of this. Everything in between. It's all part of this beautiful relationship that we have. All part of this beautiful covenant that we have. And in any relationship, hopefully, you have a beautiful relationship in your house, in your home, between each other. It's not that sure it's in the nitty gritty, and sure it's in the do and the don'ts, but it's not the real beauty of this relationship. Hopefully, all of what you do and you don't do is imbued with the beauty of the relationship. Hopefully, so the do's and the don'ts are trivial to the relationship. So the question is, that's why the question is, the truth that Rashi wants to tell the child, what's your story? Let's hear your story. What is your story? How do you translate the story of the Torah, of the giving of the Torah, of all these things. What is the story? What is your story?
What does it mean to you?
What's your narrative? Is your narrative only A, the narrative of the portion A, or is the narrative also B? What's your story? The truth is, in Mitzvah, as I said, you're going to come into the story of the golden calf, and there'll be in 2-3 weeks, you'll come to, and you'll have another narrative. The narrative of tshuva, the narrative of coming back, right? That's also part of the narrative. It's also part of the story, right? Everything is part of the story. The question is, what is your story? What is the most important part of your story? Is it A, B, C? So there's a beautiful medrash. He brings out the medrash, and we'll finish with this medrash. Rabbi Yeshua said, text number 9, God told the Jewish people while they were still in Egypt that the redemption was conditioned on the construction of a sanctuary for him, in which he would rest his presence in the midst of his people. So in essence, what Medrash wants to tell you, because you're going to come next week to this Parsha's Truma, the narrative continues, right? The narrative of the building of the Mishkan. Asli Migdash, right? And I shall dwell in your midst. Comes the Medrash and tells us this didn't happen. If you go chronological order, the question is, when did that happen? We have it all argument. When did that happen? When did God tell the Jewish people to build the Mishkan? Before the golden calf, after the golden calf? We're not clear. It's very unclear when it happened. If you go to chronological order, it sounds like it happened before the golden calf.
But how could it happen?
How could it happen before the golden calf? Right, that's a good question. So it's not so clear. The Torah is not clear, and therefore we have an argument in it. Comes this Medrash and says, actually, God told the Jewish people in the desert already about the I mean in Egypt already about the Mishkan. Really, I mean, the beauty of this is, and you should realize what the Rebbe wants to tell you. What is your story? What is your story? If your story is situations, right? If your story in life is about situations in life, then you have an issue of chronological order. If your story is about connection, right? If the Jewish story is about our connection to God, then who cares about the chronological order? Who cares when the situations happen? It's not important that's just the technical issue in the story. That's when you have the nudnik who gets but what ever heard Yankel tells a story that the Shmerel, the Shmazel spilled the soup over Levi, and then you have the nudnik says, what was the soup? What was it? Was it cream with mushroom? Was it tomato soup? Like you need to know each technicality. Was it tomato soup or what was the difference? It was a difference in the story. Oh, it was tomato soup. Okay, now the whole story has changed because we have a different soup. Whatever. My point is, the Eibishter, in essence, told the Jewish people the whole journey, even though it wouldn't happen. And the question, why did it happen? Did it happen because of the golden calf? Did it happen because of A, B? And that's when you start getting technical. Why did they have to build this beautiful thing? Oh, some people say because of the golden calf, and God had to get him away from the golden calf, or the cows, and God wanted to change the cows from worshiping idols to sacrifice. We have goes technical. But the truth is, we should have also a different story. And the story is about the beauty of the connection with us and God. And therefore, I mean, even you think simply that Mishpatim goes into Truma is also a little crazy. You go from laws of slavery to building this tabernacle. What's going on over here? Whew. Boom.
I think it should be reversed.
I don't know. This whole thing is like so. It's like so. I don't know. I don't want to use the wrong words. Counterintuitive in a way. Because it's mindless. Like what is it? What is the flow over here? It's like it's interesting to see understand the flow, and we sometimes get stuck in that, not to realize what is the difference with the flow. The important the relationship that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, which would rest in the presence of mitzvah. This is the meaning of the verse. They will know that I am the Lord, their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, in order that I might dwell in their midst. So when the Jewish people heard that, in Egypt, that God says, I'm going to bring you out of Egypt and you're going to live in your midst, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? And the Medrash says, yeah, they were thinking about they would think whatever it takes. If it's tabernacle, it's tabernacle. If it's not to kill, it's not to kill. If it's not to do sheikh, it's not to do sheikh. If it's not, whatever it is. We want the relationship. That's what's important. The technicalities, we'll get to the technicalities. We'll deal with the technicalities. They'll know that when the tabernacle was erected, the divine sending the rest of their midst. It was not an issue to them. It was not a problem. It was not a problem for them. Nasa v'nishma. It was not a problem for them. Nasa, whatever expression you want. We'll listen. We'll build a tabernacle. Whatever you want. Now I've said, when the tabernacle was built, something unprecedented in the history of the world occurred. From the time of creation until that day, God's presence hadn't rested in the lower levels of the world. This began only after the tabernacle was built. So the Jewish people in Egypt already understood that if that's what's going to happen, better for us. If that's what's going to take the concept of us having a greater presence of God in our midst, then that's what we're going to do. It might take time. And it did take time. This is a chronological order. It didn't happen in Egypt. It happened. It happened. It's not important when it happened, but ultimately it happened because they understood that was their journey. So that's the story. Even though there are many stories that you can have in this story, hopefully, in essence, the Rebbe says Rashi tells you this Rashi to tell us that this story, hopefully the flashback, like you said before, hopefully you realize it's all should be the narrative of the relationship, the commitment, the oneness that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really part of every story that we have in our journey. Every story that comes in our journey should be connected in some way to the narrative of your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And once you have that story, once you have that focus, it's not important. There's no chronological otera, or is a chronological otera. There is not chronological. It's not important. It's important the narrative of our relationship with God that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What a beautiful sikha of the Rebbe. God bless you all. See you next week. I also want to remind those who are on Zoom, you can come, not on Zoom, but on Zoom, and those are here. You can come tonight, decoding the Talmud. Even if you didn't come to last week, so you can still come. The third class is going to be a phenomenal class. Unbelievable. Tonight at 7 p.m. Be there or don't be there. Okay, see you later.